Good morning, Barclay.
Good morning, Tessa. How's it going with TFT? It's seen lots of tweets and stuff.
It's been absolutely fabulous. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this morning and delighted that you're able to share it and be part of it with us.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here. It's a great idea, great initiative, and congratulations to you and SDI for pushing it.
Thank you very much. It's really been our pleasure, and we've had an amazing lineup of speakers so far. You follow Mark Smalley, who had his tux on just now, which was very impressive. And there's been if you've been following Twitter, there's a Twitter rumour that Ian Clayton will be wearing Speedos at the end of when we close TFT later on today. So who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
I saw that. I actually was going to wear a dress because somebody described it, said follow Barclay's presentation tomorrow when she will be describing such and such. So I thought, but I didn't manage to get measured up in time. So
you could be saying you're wearing a skirt, and we'd be none the wiser, you see, because we can't actually see. So I know you really well. I've had the opportunity to work with you on a number of occasions, but there might be a few people in our audience that don't know who you are, haven't had the opportunity to kind of follow your ITSM goodness on Twitter, or haven't seen you in your Mac as the ITSM inspector. So could you perhaps for our audience just give us a little bit of background about you, Barclay?
Sure, yeah. Well, I've been doing service management one way or another really since the sort of early mid-80s. I was a service desk manager right when they started and did that for a number of years and really enjoyed it, but I probably wouldn't want to do it again. But I think it's a kind of rite of passage role that people should do as part of this. But I started consulting in '94 and really have been doing that one way or another since. So lots of different projects and challenges, a lot of the same stuff, a lot of new stuff. Been at it for too long. I should really give up now, really. I'm too old.
No, never.
Still love it though, still love it. Yeah.
Well, that's the most important thing. If you love it and you're passionate about it, you should do it for as long as you feel that way. Now, we will be collecting questions via Twitter, so if anybody would like to ask Barclay a question, they can do so using the TFT12 hashtag. If they could also hashtag QFS, and that enables us to pull out the questions from the Twitter stream. While I'm here, I'd just like to say thanks very much to BMC Software. They have sponsored TFT12, and without them we wouldn't have been able to make this possible. So, as I say, many thanks to them for making it happen with us. And if you're ready, Barclay, I will hand over to you for you share your screen and your presentation. And I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. For those of you that have come across me before, I do this thing in Twitter every day where there's a tweet that goes out, at least one tweet, which I call ITSM goodness, and that really came from people starting to use that term quite regularly, just to relate to, I suppose, just good advice more than anything else, and that's really what this presentation is about. Given, as I said, I've been around for about 200 years, done loads and loads of projects. What I just try and do is provide as much practical advice as possible. I'm well aware of all the changes and challenges in the industry, and I will talk a little bit about that to begin with. But mostly, I just want to provide lots of nuggets that you can take away and use in your world of practical service management. These are the things that I really do: service desk, service level management, and sort of general ITSM. I do a lot of service level management these days. It seems to be something that's, although there's a lot of debate about whether it's valuable, there's a lot of people wanting to do it. And as Tessa mentioned, I also present ITSMTV, and I am, for my sins, a service desk inspector. I don't have a cape, and if I do wear a Mac, it's a clean one, I can assure you. And you'll also find me on the Rest of the World ITSM Weekly podcast, which is a slightly irreverent look. You could say irrelevant as well. Irreverent look at the world of ITSM that you'll find on the Servisphere site. What I'll always like to just start with, almost everything that I'm doing really is just to remind people what it is we're about, and this graphic is really there to just kind of just prompt that we spend a lot of time thinking about what we do in IT in terms of infrastructure. We've built this monster, you might say, in terms of, you know, best practice concepts or frameworks and standards and all sorts of things which tend to fall under process and governance. We try to build IT services when they're appropriate. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And we try to follow and meet business processes. That's all. I heard Mark Smalley talking about the inside out idea just at the end of his presentation. You know, what we're about is this. We're about hitting the target, which is the business that we follow. So whatever it is we do, if we work for, you know, Kellogg's, we make cornflakes. If we work in the electricity industry, we make power. We don't just work in IT, we do stuff that helps our businesses to achieve what they want to do. And that's going to be the center of all of this, not IT, not process, not all these other things. These are all tactics to get us towards achieving this. And, you know, if we lose sight of this, and sometimes we do, then we're probably missing a trick, and we may become irrelevant sooner than we think. One of the sort of key elements, I think, that we have to accept is this idea that we have to get out from behind the desk, out from behind the screen, and move from that mindset of being systems providers to service providers. And that's difficult. You know, if you've been working in the same organization, you know people as friends who are your customers, it can be quite hard to adopt that mindset. But, you know, if we're going to be professional and we're going to stay in a job, we have to do that. So it means getting out from behind the desk and actually engaging with people, not just being IT people, but engaging with them and understanding and working with them in a way that, you know, that you can demonstrate to them that you know what it is that they need and that you are delivering that or not. So that's the kind of mindset that we'll be looking at. In terms of just the main points I want to cover, I'll be looking at what is a brilliant service desk, service level management, and ITSM. A lot to pack in, but also just an initial look at where we are in the world of ITSM, because there's a lot of debate at the moment. What I find, I go out and talk to lots and lots, I sound like a politician here, I talk to people around the country all the time. I do work with a lot of different organizations, you know, hundreds and hundreds of projects. And what people say to me, and I know they say to others, you know, we need practical help, we need stuff that's relevant for us. And very often, where do we start? With things like service level management, for example, there's a lot of theoretical ideas out there, but not a huge amount of practical guidance on where to start, how to get going, how to make it work. At the same time, you know, there are these, as I said, there are these frameworks, there's all the training, there's all the formal side of the industry, and at the same time there's also quite a large section of the industry saying, actually, no, this stuff doesn't work and it's not relevant and it's not current. And if you're a practitioner trying to do the best, that can be really challenging. I think that's really what I'm trying to answer in this presentation. We need to be aware of the new stuff, we need to act on it, but just in terms of moving forward, we need to have a route through all this kind of maze. And some of the questions that are coming up, you know, are we still relevant? Will we be relevant? There's all these different challenges, not just in terms of technology, but also in terms of commercial model, engagement models. Is ITIL still relevant? You know, there's been debate about two-speed ITIL. Should we have something that is more up to date every year, or that reflects changes, because change is so fast? I think that's a good idea. But if it changes only every 4 or 5 years, it's just going to miss out so much stuff. And whilst the principles may hold, if the context of ITIL still looks like something from the 80s and the 90s, then it's not going to be well received. And you know, we need to understand that. We need to do something about it, I think. Okay.
I'm sorry, Barclay, I'm just going to interrupt your flow for a second. I've just noticed we don't appear to be seeing your slides here. Should we be seeing your slides at this point, or are you still at introduction mode? No, you're seeing my slides. Okay, so we probably need. That's okay. We can make it work from here. I know where you are. So you were, I think, probably on slide. You've covered your agenda. I think you were on what next our practitioners saying.
No, I was on the next one actually.
Next one. Oh, sorry for not keeping up. Current dilemmas. How about current dilemmas in running something live to the nation on TFT 12?
That's it. Yeah. Okay, that's where I was. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So you just tell me when you want me to move you to the next slide, Barclay.
the joys of technology. Okay, well, so yeah, I was just talking about is IT relevant? Is ITIL relevant? What's the future for the service desk? A lot of discussion about whether it's, you know, that needs to be rethought out and redone, and it definitely needs to change, I think. But I also do remember talking to somebody about 1990 and IBM saying the service, you know, going to see the service desk of the future, which was this beautiful ambient room where nothing actually happened. There was nice lighting, people were doing crosswords and solving complex algorithms in the background while everybody else worked perfectly. And of course, there's not many service desks actually like that at the moment. Hopefully that will change still, but I think there is still a question about that. And then the whole thing about service level management, SLAs, what's the point of a service catalog? What is it? How do we get started? All these things are questions. Okay, next slide, please. The first one is we don't need ITIL. If you move on, please, Tessa.
It takes a couple of seconds to catch up, Barclay, from the YouTube feed.
Sorry about that. Then it's quite a few of these are quick zipping through, so I'll need to slow myself down. I shouldn't have drunk so much coffee before this.
Don't worry. Okay,
so you know, we don't need ITIL. Yeah, well, we don't need ITIL actually, but we do need to be these things, you know, and those are the things that you see in the early pages of all the volumes about consistency, reliability, efficiency, and so on. One way or another, we need to do that. You know, we need to have some way of managing that, whether we use ITIL or not. If you move on to the next one, whether we need ITIL or not, it doesn't really matter to me. But at the same time, you know, we can use a lot of the knowledge that's in those frameworks. We don't need a service catalog. We jumped ahead there. Well, we don't actually, but we do need to be able to articulate and present our services, accessible. Certainly, that thing about being easy to do business with. There's a big point in there where there's a lot of argument about, you know, do we need to produce some kind of nice version of what we do? Well, actually, if we want to really engage with our businesses, then we need to have some way of presenting what we do in a way that's meaningful to them. Have relevant information on hand to deliver efficient support. Absolutely, we need to do that internally, and have some basis to identify if we're meeting expectations or not. If we can move on. Similarly, we don't need SLAs. Almost certainly not. And the problem with SLAs really is that they have been very poorly done. Where the blame lies for that with practitioners and/or on the industry in terms of not actually laying out how to do it, to me is neither here nor there now, because we have that situation where we have a lot of very bad SLAs and people who don't want to do it. But you know, we still need a way of managing expectations, of understanding what it is that our organizations need, and setting some kind of targets for ourselves to achieve that. Maybe if we move on then to we don't need a service desk one, Tessa, if you don't mind. Seems to be quite slow to load that up. Yeah, that's great. We do need a service desk, I think, unless, of course, we can eradicate all our issues and problems associated with IT. That's certainly moving in that direction, I think. Not that we'll get rid of all the issues, but that there'll be less dependency. And I think, again, Mark Smalley was mentioning that in the last session. Move away from the break fix to, you know, let's sort out your issues, let's manage you. IT is becoming more complex ever more, so we actually need more to be helping people to do what they need to do rather than just sorting them out. But also, I think more importantly, we need to decide whether we are happy that communication is handled in an ad hoc manner. One thing you do get with a service desk, of course, is the ability to control and manage and, you know, own the relationship with your customers. And if we don't have that, then we're in a slightly dangerous place, I think. And particularly, you know, once we start losing control of what customers actually think about us and our service, then, you know, we're losing control of our business relationship. So moving on, there is a slide now called Moving On. if you move on to the next one, thank you. So there's a lot of debate in the industry. There's a whole pile of stuff that I've been doing recently on Service Catalog that will come out in various other blogs and so on in due course, in more detail, because there was a debate back to ITSM on that, which I thought started to get a little bit like LinkedIn. But basically, I think what we have to do is really think about, what business are we in, who are our customers, what do they need from us, from talking to them, and use that information to give us some targets, a basis to present our service, and a basis for reporting. How we define that, whether it's ITIL, Service Catalog, SLAs, service management, it's all part of the same thing, and I don't really care whether people have got formal SLAs or formal service catalogs, as long as they are doing those things. And it does depend on the industry, it depends on the size of the organization. All those things will determine the maturity of the organization. All those things will determine what extent people develop those things, but we need to be doing them. And if we're not, then we're asking for trouble, I think. Okay. So on to the kind of ITSM goodness, building a brilliant service. If you move on, what do we mean by brilliant service or brilliant service organization? Well, I think, and this looks at the characteristics. This is how we would recognize, and we should all recognize that from our own experience domestically and the sorts of things that we buy ourselves. A brilliant service organization has a great reputation. It's respected and appreciated for the value that it delivers. It has tangibly motivated, positive people working in it. I know from experience, and I know many other consultants have the same view, that you walk into an organization and within minutes, within seconds, in fact, what sort of culture is in that organization, how people are empowered, how they are motivated. If it's all heads down, nobody's looking up, there's no eye contact, it's either very quiet or very, very noisy, in the sense that people are running around in panic mode or else hiding everything behind their desk. I remember one organization where they had all sorts of mirrors at the end of each aisle and on people's desks, so that they could actually see what people are doing without actually being spotted looking at what they were doing. And the culture there was horrible. But the culture really is the biggest thing. I heard Breed Lewis last night talking about that, about culture and people. It's the most important thing in any service organization. And those people need to be motivated, they need to be encouraged to be positive in terms of what they do, they need to be professional in what they do. The organization should have a clear identity in terms of a well-communicated definition of roles and services and what we do. A code of practice is a good way of doing that. Just say, what do we do, what business are we in, who do we serve, how do we work, what's acceptable, what's not. With that, you can have less rules if you're clear about what the general principles are. And if you have an open and positive culture, then people will not be afraid to stick their head above the parapet. That's the thing in the kind of closed authoritarian cultures. People don't want to suggest things because they fear that they will be shot down, and particularly if they think or it seemed to be a silly idea. You've got to be able to ask the childish questions and be prepared, to get a really good response or not. But that's the kind of culture that you want. And also, a good organization is well marketed and publicized. People forget things very quickly. You're only as good as your last service experience, and so on. Marketing, principles of marketing are just as important here as any of our ITSM processes and standards. Next slide, please. How do we get to this? How do we get the brilliant service organization? Well, I think quite simply, we hire for personality, not CV or tech skills. We're very choosy. We have to remember that people that are at the front line are representing our organization. If you're at the top of the organization and you turn around and say, service is important to me, customers are important, and then you hire lots of people straight out of school who've got no experience or no life experience or no technical skills, what message is that actually giving out? Why can't you understand that the people at the front line are the people representing the organization? Teamwork has got to be across the whole organization, not just the front line, the service desk. And that means things like the technical staff actually showing respect. Respect is quite an important word at the moment, I think, in terms of how that has developed over the last few years, where really the service desk used to be right at the bottom of the pile, lower than, lower than journalism, effectively. But I think now there's a much better appreciation of the value and the contribution that's made by people in a service desk. But clear supporting processes, governance and ownership is absolutely essential. Operational practices, fairly straightforward, measuring and reviewing them, trusting staff to get on with service, empowering them, giving them autonomy. Again, back to this thing about the less rules you have. If you have good people, you need less rules. And that should really make a much more motivated workforce as well as a more productive workforce. Incident tracking is just, I put that in quite specifically, that, if we're talking about service and support, we must be ready to not just let the system and the process take care of everything. We have to be a bit more proactive. We have to be strict and fair in policing that, but I've never really found a system that works absolutely automatically. Not the fault of the system, but there's always things that come up, and we can't have a process and procedure for everything. So I think you've got to take a fairly strong lead in terms of making sure that you monitor what's happening, that you do things like triage and tracking, and you chase people up, and that's the way that service gets done. That's going the extra mile and so on. Skills profiles as well. If you don't understand what your people are able to deliver, both in terms of technical and also in terms of business and interpersonal skills, how are you going to be able to define the service and measure and manage that service? So there's a number of things there. In terms of service desk goodness, quite specific here, a brilliant service desk. So it's a focal point for delivery. It's supported by other back office and support groups. It's that understanding. There was a recent survey at a conference which said, that in terms of ITIL and service management, the world was still at, maturity level 2 or less, and that we haven't really developed, we haven't really moved on. And I think the point there that is probably that we've probably got quite good at building service desks and making them effective and training people to do that kind of job, but what we haven't managed to do is really grasp the whole supply chain concept and really get other parts of our extended service organization, whether that's internal or external or both, to work with us. That's probably still the biggest challenge. It was when I was a service desk manager 20 odd years ago, and it still seems to be the big challenge, that we seem to separate service desk from service management and see them as two separate things, whereas of course they are absolutely central. And that's why I do think that being a service desk manager is a key component in your journey if you really want to make this effective, because you've got to live that pain, the triumvirate or the trifecta of death, or whatever you want to call it, that where you have 3 different communities to deal with. You have your service desk team, making them effective and happy and useful. You have your customer base, satisfying them, and also you have to deal with your own colleagues in IT, and to each of those you have to represent the other, and you have to be thinking from a slightly different position. And of course the nightmare day is when you go in and all 3 hate you and are really going for you. The challenge is to get the juggling right so that all 3 are on side with you. But that to me is still one of the most it's still the critical core at the center of ITSM is that whether it's a service desk manager or somebody close to that role who is able to make those 3 things work, so that that we then get this thing that management sees the service desk as a valuable asset, not just a cost center. Few of them are profit centers, not many. In terms of actual characteristics, we know that 60 to 70% upwards is a useful contact resolution rate. It's where the customer satisfaction goes up significantly, because people trust the service. They know that more often than not they will get their incident fixed. Ideally, we have less than 5% churn or attrition, you know, in terms of staff moving around. If it's an unstable environment, it's very difficult to manage a stable service. And one of the first rules of a service desk, obviously, is to be accessible. And you know, on the telephone side, you really should not be having an abandon rate higher than 5%. I just put that in as a, you know, some practical numbers to be looking at. The numbers game is another balancing game, of course, where there's no one single one of those metrics and the others is important on its own. It's got to be part of a balanced scorecard, of a balanced spider web of metrics. That, you know, it's not just good saying, oh, we've got a great first-time fix rate or our abandon rate's 40%. That doesn't work. That's failed on the access issue. But ideally, it's seen as, if you want to move on, ideally it's seen as an aspirational place to work more than anything, and that really is the challenge. So, I mean, to build that brilliant service desk, we need to have brilliant people. As a manager, we need to set the tone in terms of code of conduct and you know, ideally a good mix of people as well. If it's all homogenous, if it's all, you know, 30-year-old kind of geeky techie guys, that's fine. But if your customer base is 60% women, then you know, you might have an issue there in terms of just general communications. So you have to think about what your customer base is and how you might meet their needs and in terms of communication. I hear a lot of people talking about, oh, first, second, and third level, first, second, and third line. What does that actually mean in your organization? Is it about time? Is it about resolving at a particular support group, or a combination of both? You have to define that very clearly, otherwise people are talking about fairly specious things. But you know, it's got to be invested in. It's got to be an aspirational place to work. And you know, generally overall, if we can fix things at that first level, it's better, it's faster, and it's cheaper for customers. Here's a couple of examples from the SDI Service Desk certification model that we've got for 5-star world class. A couple of things in here that, you know, just points that we're looking for around about advocacy, around about efficiency, and things like emotional intelligence. You know, it's very hard to define that in kind of measurable terms, but you know, if you say, well, we talk to people and we understand that they're empowered to act beyond their, you know, that they're supported when they act beyond their remit. We encourage them to be proactive. Issues are seen as opportunities and so on. These are, again, are characteristics that we'd be looking for. And you know, running through all of this is that whole concept of culture and supporting your people. On to the next one, please. And people, of course, is a key point here. I wouldn't hire the guy on the left unless I really wanted to, you know, carry out a very public massacre. But you know, we do get stuck with the wrong people, and you know, we've probably all been in that situation where those guys working, if you move on to the next one, those guys working in the service desk are actually getting in the way of delivering quality and value. And we have to think about the requirements. We have to think about very much, you know, what is that person going to be doing? What skills do they need to have? That's why a skills matrix is so important. What outcomes will their role be presenting? And that second point there, you know, good service needs people who show commitment, emotional intelligence, empathy, maturity, professionalism, doggedness, openness, confidence, and consistency. You don't get much of that from an 18-year-old, no matter how technical and bright they might be, how much potential they've got. In terms of, you know, providing a business service to somebody who's maybe, you know, in distress because they need to be supported. Oops, went ahead there. It's very difficult to get that from, you know, and to be honest, people under 25 or 30. But you know, there's lots of great people I know who do that role, who've been given the right guidance, who've been managed and mentored well to provide the right levels of empathy and not be patronizing, not be over technical, all that kind of good stuff. If you hire people based on their qualities, then you don't need so many rules. And the other thing I had that just as a analogy there was the investors, you know, the Dragon's Den, that what they look for is not necessarily what people are doing, it's the people themselves. They invest in people that they think that they could work with, not just because they've got they've got an idea on how to make some kind of widget that will turn your phone into a I don't know, a chopping board or something like that. Documentation. This is a particular gripe of mine. I see so many organisations where they've just produced pages and pages, and apart from being politically rather incorrect in terms of the green agenda, it's just nobody reads that stuff. Nobody reads a 200-page document unless they've got a really important reason to do so, or that they have to do it in order to pass an exam or something. And even then, do they actually take it all in? Particularly if you're talking about the service desk environment, things need to be done quickly. You need to get quick answers, and one-page communiques are so much better than a 25-page project document. So bear that in mind when you're actually trying to write stuff that people in the front line are going to use. Bear that in mind when you're talking to other people in IT, when you're asking them to give you resolutions for your service desk. That actually, it's no point. And I had this experience many years ago where I convinced one of the development people to give us more things that we could resolve at the service desk. And he came into my office and he dumped about 10 manuals on my desk and said, "Well, there you go. On you go. Get on with it." As if he thought that I or my team had the time to read through that and then understand it. Secondly, you just want one page. You want a quick overview and guidance on what to do and where to go, and that sort of stuff is, can sit underneath at the technical level in your service documentation under your service catalog. You'd never present it to customers, but it's there underneath a service definition. Okay, moving on to SLM. So service level management, really, for me, I think this is service management. I think it is. It's the mandate, it's the core, it's the thing that actually drives everything. If we haven't got a clear definition of what it is that we do, then what on earth are we doing? And how can we measure ourselves? How can we improve? We tend to start with SLAs, which is the wrong way around. We should start with services. SLAs are a part of a service, and we can't really define them much more than just simply reactive, fixing failure, rather than actually getting something that is about value and helps both the IT organization and the business. People say to me, "Oh, service catalog is just for IT." It is just for IT. There's no doubt about that. But it helps IT help the business. So it's not necessarily a bad thing just because it's for IT. And that kind of gets forgotten sometimes, particularly if you then get a bad service catalog, which is 800 pages long. But we need to use simple language. You need to be thinking about things that are realistic and sustainable in terms of what we can measure and manage. But we must be able to measure it in some way. And if we end up with, if you want to move on, if we end up with an 800-page document, then it's what I call a service level disagreement. The analogy with the service catalog is if you had a restaurant that didn't have a menu, not only would it be hopeless for the customer, but it would be hopeless for the organization as well, because they wouldn't know how to organize themselves. So like the menu is guidance for what the recipes are and what they need to buy, and that's all the stuff that would be in the technical service catalog. A few points of SLM goodness on SLAs. Don't write them if you are particularly a frustrated lawyer, don't try and write a legal document. That's the worst form of being patronizing that we do in IT. We sit down and say, right, I'm the person of the first party, and I'm going to produce something that protects me and that doesn't prejudice me in any way in any court of law in this or any other. These people work with you. You just need to write one page. It's not a novel, and it's certainly not a technical document. So we need to think about that when we're actually preparing that. Don't fudge the SLA targets into percentages of percentages of percentages. If the target is 99%, or it's the system is available between 8 and 6, then that's the target, not something that we can meet just to please ourselves, but doesn't actually give us any value. Failing an SLA is actually is a gift. Is that rather twee comment that a complaint is a gift? Failing an SLA is a gift. It gives you some information that you can do something with. And I do think that SLAs, if you want to move on, should be about positive value delivered by IT services, not just responding to failure. So it should be about more than, it should be about how we help the organization to do what it does, and achieve what it's doing, whether that's making cornflakes, building widgets, or whatever it is, rather than just simply we're good at sorting things out, we're good at fixing things. Okay, next one. And we can skip through these. This is simply just, when we go to the airport, we don't expect to get information about all aspects. We're talking about reporting here, aspects of what's below the hood. All we care is that our flight arrives on time. We don't need to know about the pilot's birthday or the fuel efficiency necessarily. It's important to the airline, but not to us. If you move on, when we are in the same position and move on again with our customer, talking about, give us information about how you're delivering value. That's the question. That it's not just a glib question. It's a question that is asked all the time now because of the challenges from consumerization, bring your own device, cloud, and so on. IT departments are having to justify themselves, having to explain and understand what they do, and in a way that helps them to improve that efficiency as well, but also in a way that their customers will actually relate to and think that they're getting some value back from. So if our business asks us, and I'm hoping the slide is going to move forward soon, if our business asks us, there we go, how we deliver value, and we give them all this sort of stuff that's about what we do. This is the classic inside out. This is what we do. Aren't you interested in that? Isn't that fascinating? All these bits of technical information. It's of no interest. Absolutely. And in fact, what it does is just annoys and irritates customers because they think they're being patronized, if you want to move on. Rather than actually, you demonstrating that you understand them and can work with them. Is that moving on to the next one? There we go. One thing is that you actually do produce stuff that is useful. If you think about all that information that you've got there, actually it forms the basis of your service reporting, not your IT reporting, but your service reporting. So it's not as if you have to start completely from scratch. It's 70–80% there, but we have to produce our documentation and our reporting in human form, whether it's English or whatever other language, not in IT geeky tech form. Otherwise, we're seen as being self-servicing, patronizing, technical, whatever. And also, one other point to remember when you're negotiating SLAs, there'll be some technical guys who kind of go, oh well, this fails every 10 years, so we can't have the SLA at that level because we'll miss it. For some reason, I said that in a Dundee accent, but that shouldn't be that shouldn't define the SLA. The SLA should be what's about normal business, and we'll deal with those one-off situations when they actually come. So it's a bit of a challenge, that whole thing of the service level management project. No one's interested in what IT does, but it has to be done. And the thing is, for me, is finding the right people to do it. Not for the faint or tech-hearted. Not just for the poor little admin junior that's been said, "Oh, go and do the SLAs," because none of us can be bothered, and we're too technical and important and interesting to do that. This is a really technical and important, interesting point, but it's about business and it's about our jobs. So we have to do services before SLAs, and you also have to deal with a lot of objections. We tried doing this before, no one was interested. Well, actually, are you surprised? Because you gave them self-serving, patronizing, technical stuff. So you've got to get around that. You've got to be ready to deal with that issue if you want to move on as part of how you develop SLM. So overall, in terms of service management overall, we have to just bear in mind that it's about teamwork, it's about other parts of IT, and there's lots of challenges there as well, because parts of IT just get bypassed by their businesses now because they just go and buy something. So we have to think about working together more. We have to think about defining our value more and understanding what our our customers actually need from us, and making sure that we're doing that. Otherwise, they'll just go and do it themselves, and they might be able to get it cheaper, but we all know about governance, we all know about consistency, reliability, security, probably more than anything, which we understand in IT, and they don't really that interested in. So we should be bigging up on how well we do that. I think also that whole business of how we manage transition still hasn't really been bottomed out, although we know more and more service desks that are involved in the actual sign-off and agreement to go live on systems. Release and service readiness is still an emerging part, and that's why we're probably still at level 2 overall as an industry. But it's thinking about the whole process in terms of SLAs and operational agreements as a supply chain, if you want to move on, rather than simply let's sort out the service desk. What do we need to do? Okay, can we outsource that, because it's it's the easiest thing to outsource. Why are these people costing us money? They're probably still the least well paid, but actually they provide massive value, and I just don't understand the approach that says, oh well, let's just outsource that part. We're just giving away the crown jewels. There's lots you can do quickly. I think it's about being clear as to what you can achieve. There's still a lot of talk about, oh well, we'll do ITIL and we'll do it quickly. There's things you can do in 20 days, but you certainly won't do ITIL, and I don't even know what that means, to be honest. But the whole thing, if you want to move on, is about being clear on very specific practical deliverables, rather than saying we're going to implement ITIL, which is a nonsense. We're going to reduce our answering time. We're going to reduce the number of incidents. We're going to increase the number of problems that we resolve. We're going to reduce the turnaround time of our incidents. Those are very, very specific things that we can actually start to measure and aim to deliver very quickly. And the next one is building a realistic plan. One of the things I do find is that operational people don't know about project management, and it doesn't need to be you need to be sent on a 20-day Prince course, and but just being clear on what we mean by deliverables and governance around about a project. It just doesn't happen on its own. You've got to drive it. You've got to be very clear on what the logistics are. A lot of project management in this area is about actually just managing people and motivating them and getting them into a room at a particular time and getting them to agree and stuff, if you want to move on. The other thing, in terms of planning, is that I do see a lot of, well, training will sort that one out. It doesn't deliver organizational change. It helps individuals to understand how to deliver organizational change, but it doesn't deliver it. And just putting well, we'll do ITIL, we'll give everybody the foundation course, is not a change strategy on its own. The most important thing of all of this, of course, is actually getting out there, engaging, talking, actually listening rather than talking. But being open and saying, tell us what's important to you, work with us, involve us, and let's work with you so that we can deliver you a better service. And that means getting your support people to go and spend time with their customers, rather than simply oh well, tell us what you want, we'll write it down, and we'll give you an SLA that we've prepared already anyway. Next one. The thing really is just to make that happen through good communications, good business relationship management. One of the other specifics that is quite annoying that it's not really developed more is problem management, and why we haven't really moved that forward. I think it's mainly because people don't really understand what needs to be done and put the wrong people in place. And again, it's a much more strategic and clout driven role than just simply administrative. In the past, it was just given to somebody to do analysis and produce some reports, but not actually to drive the whole thing forward. So it's the spyglass, yes, to do the analysis, but the whip to make it happen. you know, and actually that's the most difficult thing when you've got to actually get people involved. Visibility is really important, I think. So actually just getting an acceptance of what the top problems are is absolutely key, and that helps with things like crowdsourcing. People know what the issues are, then they can do something about it. If you want to move on. And you know, ultimately it's about culture. ITSM is not a traditional IT development project. I think it's good that you have potentially proper project managers who work on it, so that the service people can be the customer, if you like, but they need to understand a bit more about ITSM, and it's not just about, you know, right, we're going to write a 25,000 line Microsoft project plan and it'll just happen. You need to think of it in different terms, and people need to feel that they're in an environment where they can change. And the last couple of slides. Probably the thing that we still don't do very well, because we don't manage very well. I don't just mean that in IT, but in general, we're not great at putting governance in place and making it work. Processes, you know, all this is a complete waste of time if we don't have governance, if we don't actually manage and police what we're doing. And we need to get more. We need to get better at management. We need to get better at controls, and really driving through a culture that where people understand that if they don't do these things and they don't do them as defined, then it's maybe just, you know, not just their roles that are in danger, but the rest of the IT organization. Okay. Finally, what can we do? I mean, this has all been about, you know, nuggets of, you know, how do we do SLM, how do we service desk, how do we do IT service management. For me, I think it's a really good idea to say, right, well, what can we do in 10 or 20 or 30 days before we embark on a massive project that is not clear on what we're trying to achieve, and show some value. And if we use these two principles, so stepping out from behind the desk, engaging with our customers, and focusing on business outcomes, these are our guides, and we can start to, you know, to talk to people, maybe look at the cost of service. We can't do all of these in 10 days, but we can do, you know, we choose some of those that will actually make a difference. If we increase our first time fix, then that might please them better because they may have less downtime. Reduce errors caused by failed changes. Be clear on service ownership so that we actually get things actioned more quickly, and so on. Using customers' feedback and net promoter value, which is about advocacy, basically. Would you recommend the service? There's a number of those things. A lot of this stuff, all these nuggets and stuff, are things that you can find on my website, and also, I mean, I have lists of all those kind of practical stuff, so you can contact me about that. But that's basically a whirlwind of about 1,000 ITSM goodness nuggets in about 45 minutes. And if anyone's still awake, or they've just been railroaded into silence, I don't know. Did you get all that, Tessa?
I got all of that, and I'm still awake. And we've done it, Barclay. We have broadcast ITSM goodness to the nation through TFT12, and we should be thoroughly pleased. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for bearing with me on my slightly dodgy slide moving, sometimes a bit too quick, sometimes a bit too slow. I never know how to preempt you, I'm sure. But yeah, we've had some lovely comments from Twitter as we've been chatting this morning. Ian Aitchison loves your curtains, by the way. I think I'll be asking you later where we can get a pair of those from.
Well, this used to be one of the kids' rooms, so it's actually still the kids' curtains. So
okay.
I have pictures of mice and owls and squirrels and things.
Kirsty can't apparently go to sleep because the content of the presentation is so good, and somebody said they've finally found the time to stream into TFT12, and they're watching you now, and it's awesome. So, you know, we've had some amazing comments from the presentation, and, you know, for me, I loved for me, the last slide, you know, the practicalities, what can people do in kind of the 10, 20, 30 days, those kind of real useful kind of nuggets of information that people can kind of take away with them and implement them as and when they need. Now, I'm sure you're available on Twitter. I believe you're doing a webinar later on this morning, is that right?
Yes, my alter ego as Shirley. I'm doing a service catalogue, which will really be laying out my stuff, my position on that, you know, in response to the back to ITSM stuff. Really, just some, again, practical stuff. People are saying, what does a service catalogue look like? Well, I've got some stuff on that. So
brilliant.
You find me over there, but don't let that stop you watching Ian Aitchison.
No, I'm sure. Well, you know, we won't stop watching Ian Aitchison or any of the other TFT12 speakers. And if they don't watch them live, you know, the videos are there for forevermore. So, as I say, thanks very much, Barclay. Thanks for being with me. Thanks for a brilliant presentation this morning, and for dealing with all our live technology issues. That's the beauty of it being live. We never know what's going to happen next. Presentation was marvellous. Thanks again, and I really look forward to catching up with you soon.
Okay, and you, good luck for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Barclay. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.